Park Heights City Council meeting to order for Tuesday, April 11th. First on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is the approval of the agenda, and we have a couple of additions on it. Under item new business, item D is proposed joint work session with Washington County over proposed road connection. And then under other council items, we can discuss setting a new work session date that we canceled earlier for our goal setting. And then we will have a closed session following our council meeting. Are there any other changes or additions? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Councilmember Liljegren, second by Councilmember Doherty. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have council staff reports, and it's been pretty quiet. I did have a Lake Elmo advisory leadership meeting on Zoom on the 29th, and there's another one for the 14th. And then I don't know if anybody else is planning to go, but I'll be going to the Metro Cities annual meeting on April 19th, and that's all I have. Councilmember Doherty.
I don't have anything to report, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Councilmember Liljegren.
I have nothing to report, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Rung.
Got 2 scheduled meetings in the future, and this morning I attended a work session at the Washington County Government Center concerning the 58th Street, and I'll give a fuller report later in the meeting when we deal with Council Member Johnson's item.
Okay. Thank you. Staff reports. Chief Hansen.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, just quick flood update. It's going to be a busy week for the river. Obviously, it's going to go up about 10 feet, they're estimating, by Monday. I did contact the plant managers at the waste treatment. That's well within, they expect to have to go another 6 feet above that to really do anything as far as action planning on their end. It might splash the Excel wall, he said. So that's good news, pending we don't get another April Fool's winter storm again. A couple of dates to throw at you here. We've got the drug prescription take back program. It's going to be at Botwell's this spring on April 22nd coming up, and that's from 10 till 1. And then in the fall, we'll have it back here at City Hall. We'll get that date later on. CPR, we've been talking about that. We have a date set for May 22nd for a CPR class for all staff and council from 9 a.m. to noon. That will be put on by Lakeview Hospital. And other than that, we've had a lot of disturbances involving high schoolers during the Nerf war activities, but I think that's starting to simmer down now. But that's it, Mayor.
Chief, I'd like to thank you and the department for all of your involvement last week with the power outage and doing the welfare checks, going door to door to make sure that everyone was okay. It was a little challenging being out for 36 hours, I think it was. But I really appreciate you taking the initiative on that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Mayor.
Next is Assistant City Administrator Pinsky.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. 2 things to report to you this evening. Richard Johnson at 6218 Peabody Avenue North was chosen as the most recent Recycling Award winner. And then spring cleanup is set for Saturday, May 20th. And that is 7:30 a.m. until noon in the Southwest Anderson Corporation parking lot.
And that's a different time from last year. It's closing earlier.
Ending an hour earlier, yes. And postcards have been distributed and the newsletter is at the printer.
Thank you. Next is the visitors' public comments section, and this is a time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on anything. And then we do have a presentation, our 2022 City Annual Financial Statement. Betty.
So I will take the time to introduce the auditor that we have this year, because David has retired, and after 25 years of seeing his face, I thought maybe you'd like to know who's standing here before you. This is Rebecca Peterson. She's with Redpath, same company. It was a pleasure working with her. She was very, very accommodating to. We did it remotely, and it was worked out very well. So I'll let her give you the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and council members, for having me here tonight. I will go through the presentation that I believe you have in front of you and is on the screen as well. During the audit, we work closely with city staff, but we really do work for the council. So as I'm speaking, if you have questions, please feel free to interrupt me and ask them. I'm happy to answer questions as we go.
Okay.
Maybe. There we go. In conjunction with our audit, there are 4 reports that we issue, so I'll briefly share the results of those with you, and then we'll do some high-level summary financial information for the city. The first report that we issue in conjunction with the audit is an opinion on the financial statements. This is the primary purpose of our audit, is to issue an opinion on the fair presentation of the numbers within the financial statements. It would be cost prohibitive for us to look at every transaction or every balance within the city, but we do some sampling and some analytical procedures to make sure that we can develop an opinion to provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are fairly stated. You'll see on here that the result indicates that we anticipate issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the result you want. The presentation indicates that we anticipate issuing, because when I submitted it for council packet, we hadn't issued the audit quite yet, but the audit has since been issued, and the result is a clean, unmodified opinion. So that's good news on that front. The second report that we issue in conjunction with the audit is a report on internal controls. We don't audit the city's internal controls, but in order to perform our audit, we gain an understanding of the controls that you have in place. And if anything were to come to our attention, either where controls weren't being followed or we thought there was an opportunity to strengthen controls, we would let you know about them. Anything significant, this would not be the first time you'd be hearing about it, but there are some matters that we're required to report in conjunction with the internal control report. And so this year we have one audit finding, and it's only because during the course of the audit, we made an adjustment to the city's numbers. There was one transaction from 2021 actually that related to sewer expense, the payment that the city makes to the Met Council for the January 2022 payment that was actually recorded in 2021. No amounts went out improperly, but we did have to make an adjustment to get that transaction into the correct year. So there's an internal control finding, but from our perspective, as far as the range of internal control findings you could have, very minor and not concerning at all. It's an extremely common finding for cities to get. The next report that we issue in conjunction with the audit is a report on legal compliance. This is a report that we look at legal compliance from an accounting perspective. The Office of the State Auditor has a series of requirements that they like us to look at in conjunction with our audit. So we maintain an awareness of those and design some procedures to test specific items. The results this year is that we did not identify any non-compliance, which again is the result you want. So that's good news. The final report that we issue in conjunction with the audit is communication with those charged with governance. It is a several-page letter that is in the back of your audit management letter that you received tonight. And it's mostly templated language, but I called out on here the key pieces of information that are unique to the city. One of the items that's communicated within the letter is any changes in accounting policies. And there was a new accounting standard that was affected this year regarding leases. And what the requirement is in regard to that accounting standard is if you have any leases that are significant, either as a lessee or a lessor, those future payments, the GASB, who issues accounting standards, wanted to see those move to the balance sheet. So this year the city reports a lease receivable for the present value of future lease revenue related to the antenna on the water tower. That's considered a lease for financial reporting purposes. So there's a receivable reflected in the financial statements that hasn't been there before. That's the most significant impact as far as changing policies this year. We're also required to communicate any significant estimates in the financial statements. The one that I have called out on the slide here is the net pension liability. That's the city's share of the PARA pension liability. PARA is the public retirement plan, and the thought process is that if PARA ever had trouble meeting their obligations, they would come look to participating employers to help them meet those obligations. And so they have an actuarial study done annually and then allocate their pension
pension liability out to all participating employers pro rata. This year, the city's share of that pension liability is $4.8 million. And if you were to look at your financial statements this year compared to last year, you would see that that pension liability has increased significantly. That's primarily a result of poor investment performance over the course of 2022 for para. I anticipate that if the economy recovers, that pension liability will kind of go back to historically where it's been, but it is extremely sensitive to market fluctuations. Moving on, we had no difficulties during the audit. City staff are great to work with, and we had no disagreements over accounting matters, which is good news. Just kind of as a heads up for other matters to make you aware of, so it seems like every year there's new accounting standards coming, and there are more coming next year. So if I'm back again next year, don't be surprised if we have more to talk about. The other item that I have flagged on here relates to unrealized change in the fair value of investments. One of the governmental accounting standards that the city is required to follow is marking the value of your investments that you're holding to fair value. And what I mean by that is if you imagine that the city had a $100,000 CD that, let's say, was paying 1% interest. You have a $100,000 asset there, but if the city had to go to market to sell that because it needed the cash, in the current market, the CDs are paying more than 1%. So you might not be able to sell that CD for $100,000. It might be worth $99,000 or some other lower number. With the rising interest rates, the sale value of the investments that the city is holding has decreased dramatically. And because you're required to report those investments at fair value, or what you could sell them at the last day of the year, your financial statements will show really a loss related to market value of investments. And I just want to reassure the council that that is not an actual loss of money going out the door. And if the city holds your investments to maturity, which I believe the plan is to, that loss will self-correct. And you'll see a future gain in that regard. The amount in the general fund this year, I think, is about a $200,000 loss, and citywide, just under $1 million, if I remember correctly. And that is something we are seeing across the board with cities. So not at all unusual, but I wanted to offer some explanation because it is such a significant decrease that you're seeing in your funds. Any questions on that before I move on? Okay. Ooh. There you go. For financial indicators, I just wanted to point out the property tax and special assessment collection rates for 2022, both roughly around 99%, and that's a nice, strong collection rate. In the cities I'm working with this year, I've seen a reduction in collection rates, due to property valuation being contested, some adjustments at the county level. So for you to be able to maintain your collection rate right around 99% is really quite well this year. The general fund balance was sufficient to meet the reserve policy, and your water and sewer funds are generating sufficient revenue to meet operating needs. So all of those items are where you would want to see them. For a high-level summary of financial results, you can see by fund type the activity that the city has going on this year. The reductions that you're seeing in decrease in fund balance, which is the second column from the left in some of those lower funds, those are planned transfers out or project spending. I'd call your attention to the general fund, though. It's showing an increase in fund balance of about $170,000, and that is after the impact of that market value adjustment for investments that I mentioned. So that shows some healthy growth in the general fund. You'd be over $300,000 without that market value adjustment. The general fund, you can see the budget to actual performance. Revenues were under budget, but expenditures were as well, so healthy increase again. Here you can see the blue line is the actual fund balance of the general fund, and the red line is the minimum fund balance policy. As you may know, the city needs to maintain a certain level of resources within its general fund to meet cash flow needs throughout the year. With property tax payments coming in twice a year, you want to make sure you have sufficient resources on hand to meet your obligations until the next property tax payment comes in, and the city is well above the mark that it's identified for where you want those balances to be. The water utility fund, you can see on here the red line is operating revenue, and the bar just is different components of operating expense. Over time, you might have those two crossing, like you can see that they did in 2021, but you generally want that red line above the bar, which is where it is. That gives you sufficient resources to meet capital and future needs in that regard. Here's the sewer fund. And I will say, if you were to compare this to a different report for the sewer fund, you would see the bars at slightly different levels just because of that restatement of the Met Council sewer expense that I mentioned previously. But overall, the sewer fund as well is operating in the condition you would want it to be. And storm sewer, the red line is well above operating expenses, which often we see in those storm sewer funds because future capital needs can be so great. That one blip you see there from 2018 was a transfer out for the comprehensive plan, and that was a planned use of resources. That's all I have for you today, but happy to answer any questions if you have any.
That was very efficient.
Oh,
Any questions for Rebecca?
Nope.
Well, thank you very much and for coming out tonight, and good report.
thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll move on to the consent agenda. You can go too, Betty, unless you want to stay.
I heard there was going to be something, a program to watch. All right, good night.
Good night. Consent agenda is approved bills and investments, checks 69223 to 69265 for a total of $390,110.20. Approved city council minutes for March 28th, 2023. Award spring 2023 ash tree removals and stump grinding project to save a tree. Authorized reimbursement of travel costs related to future ETAC, which is Energy Transition Advisory Committee. Authorize reimbursements of travel costs related to regional council mayors, and adopt resolution for Fair Housing Month, and authorize the St. Croix Crossing Half Marathon for July 29th, 2023. Any questions or a motion?
I move approval of the consent.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Doherty, second by Councilmember Runk. Eric?
Councilmember Doherty.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Liljegren.
Yes.
Councilmember Runk.
Yes.
Mayor McCumber.
Yes. We have no public hearings for tonight, so I'll move to old business, which is MnDOT, Municipal Boundary Adjustment, Joint Resolution. Eric?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This matter stemmed from some discussion a few months back where MnDOT is seeking a change of jurisdiction and boundary in the area west of Oak Green Avenue, east of Norrell Avenue, of about 13.1 acres. All of the land, it lies within the Trunk Highway 36 right-of-way. Their desire to change this very narrow strip of land stems largely from cleaning up the corner, as well as to adjusting a boundary jurisdictional challenge on the north side of the frontage road west of Norrell. So if I'm getting all that right. And that section of road largely already lies within the city of Oak Park Heights' maintenance responsibilities in total. So it's not, would not necessarily add any burden to the city. In order to accomplish something like this, a joint resolution of both the cities is required. That document is in your packet. We've shared this with the city of Stillwater. We've spoken with the state Office of Boundary Adjustments, and they seem to be comfortable with the whole thing. And if MnDOT would like to seek further turnback agreements of other land, such as the frontage road east of Oak Green Avenue, that is an entirely separate action that's not being addressed tonight. It's just this points west. So if you're comfortable with this, staff would ask that you consider the resolution, and we'll carry it on from there.
Nice to get all the lines straight. Any questions for council? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Liljegren, second by Councilmember Johnson. Eric?
Councilmember Doherty?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Liljegren?
Yes.
Councilmember Runk?
Yes.
Mayor McCumber?
Yes. Next is new business, and we have set date, time, and location for 2023 Party in the Park. Jennifer?
Yes, Mayor and Council. The council has typically set Party in the Park each year for the first Thursday following the last day of school. And in this school district, the last day of school is June 7th. And so I'm recommending that the city council consider setting Party in the Park for June 8th, which would be Thursday. Typically, we do 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. at Brecky Park, and I would recommend we stick with what we typically do. The other thing that we might want to consider tonight too is just setting Night to Unite, which this year is August 1st, 2023.
You could have the chief chime in on that. I think he might want to wait till next meeting for that.
Okay.
Yeah, either way, I've looked it up too, Mayor.
Okay.
That's fine. That'd be great, actually. We can lock that down.
Okay.
I don't believe that's a Tuesday. I'm just double checking that that's not a council meeting by chance.
It's not.
Okay, great.
And that's like the first Tuesday in August?
First, yep.
August
Okay.
1st.
August.
Any questions for Jennifer about setting that time? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Johnson, second by Councilmember Runk. All in favor?
Aye.
Next is no parking zone, 62nd Street. 62nd Street, do it. Okay.
Yeah, I'll take this one. It's relatively easy. So we received a request to install no parking signs or have a no parking zone on 62nd Street North. This is west of Osgood Avenue, in front of the Summit Park condos and apartments. This originated due to vehicles parking on both sides of the street when the lots are being plowed. Both Chief Hansen and I reviewed the request. It seems reasonable. But since no parking zones are established by ordinance, this will require a draft, an ordinance amendment resolution. And so if you folks are agreeable to this no parking zone, we would draft that resolution and then bring it back to the next council meeting.
Does that need a public hearing?
I believe it does not.
Okay. All right.
I've got a question. Is this both sides of the street?
One side of the street. It would be the south side of
Okay.
62nd Street, one side only.
That's what I was checking on, because I think the north side is actually Stillwater.
Yeah, the border is real close to the boulevard there. I think the full street is in Oak Park Heights, but
Okay, I'm not sure, just
yeah.
know.
It's pretty narrow back there.
it's
so I
a
can
narrow
see that.
street, yeah.
Okay.
I remember it came up with the issue when they were looking at, the county was looking at running it up there. You had the cemetery and everything else.
Right. Is there any questions for Andy? Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Doherty, second by Councilmember Liljegren. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, excellent.
And then you can't go away, Andy.
Nope,
'cause
I'll
next-
stay right here.
Next is Brecky Park Ball Field Backstop Replacement and Grant Award.
Yeah, so this is some good news. Folks, we plan to replace the failed backstops at the Brecky Park ball fields. We originally estimated that cost to be about $40,000. Good news. We received a quote from Town and Country Fence to replace those backstops for $15,250. What's more is we recently applied for a grant, and let me get this right, through the Minnesota Twins Community Fund Field for Kids program. And so we did receive a $5,000 grant to offset the cost. The requirements of the grant are quite simple. Those are listed in your packet. So what we'd propose to do is remove the old backstops, install new backstops. They'll be about 12 feet, or they will be 12 feet tall, rather than, I don't know how tall the existing are, but they're way, way too tall. And so Town and Country would remove those backstops, replace them, take away the old ones, and then Public Works staff would clean up the site. We wouldn't do this work until late summer, early fall, given that the SCVAA, or the Valley Athletic Association, uses those fields in the spring and the summer. So we don't want to put any kids off of the fields. The remainder of the improvement, aside from the $5,000 grant, would be paid for using the Parks and Trails Improvement Fund, and we have plenty of money in that budget. The $5,000 would offset after the project is complete. So ultimately, it would cost the city $10,250 to replace those failed backstops, which is a good deal in my opinion. So I'm here asking you folks, if you agree, if you see fit, to authorize us to accept the matching grant of $5,000 from the Twins Community Fund and its Cornerstone partners, and then authorize, of course, funding for the remainder of the project to actually install the fence, or I'm sorry, the backstops.
Can you send a thank you note to the Twins?
Of course we will, yep. Well, they'll actually, I think they're going to want to have a little plaque
okay.
next to the ball field too, so, which we'll happily
nice.
install, and, yep.
Okay. Any questions for Andy?
Will they be holding batting practice?
No batting
Oh,
practice,
okay.
unfortunately.
Is there a motion to go ahead with replacing the ball field backstop at Brecky?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Liljegren, second by Councilmember Doherty. All in favor?
Aye.
Next is, thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Next is proposed joint work session with Washington County over proposed road connection. Carly?
Thank you, Mayor. So as you can see in the packet, today, this morning, Washington County had a work session regarding the proposed extension of Manning Avenue into Oak Park Heights. And the packet was included in this action, so you guys can read that, and I assume you all have prior to this meeting. But one of these discussions was the county's next steps. And before that happened, I think a joint work session might be beneficial so that we could exchange ideas and perspectives to come to a mutually beneficial resolution. I reached out to Commissioner Kriesel yesterday afternoon, and he said he would be open to having such a meeting. I put out a proposed format as well as a proposed letter, which, again, if anyone has any edits or revisions, I'm open to. But I think this might be a starting point, and it might be one of our best steps forward as we proceed with this project, or as the county proceeds with this project.
I know we've tried several times to have joint work sessions, and I think of what, Chuck, was it maybe 3 years ago, you and I met with, we were at some event. I saw Commissioner Kriesel and Commissioner Myron.
He quoted that this morning.
Could I finish, please? Thank you. But for some reason, we never seem to get it all coordinated to have a joint work session. So I think it's time. It's probably way past time.
I'd agree with that. And I don't know if this will be effective, but at least it's a good shot. So I think one of the things we'd have to kind of discuss too is what dates would work, and probably a work session amongst ourselves to discuss in advance.
Are you talking about maybe like before our next council meeting, like on Tuesday, or you want to do this sooner?
I'm open to whatever date works for everyone's calendars. I know everyone's super busy, so if it needs to be before or after or a different date, I think I'm open to that.
Sometimes it's easier to do another date and do everything. Anybody have any comments on?
I'm going to have a comment because I was at the meeting this morning, and it was somewhat interesting. I said I had noticed, I get the agendas from the county automatically every 2 weeks. And I had noticed on the agenda that they were going to discuss this morning. And so it was Friday. I emailed the administrator. He was out of the office, but he did call me back later. And so over the weekend, I had actually drafted a letter that I was going to send to the county board, because there's a lot in this information, and Eric's got it available online to bring up here, that simply wasn't true. And I mean, namely, we're the bad guys. So I decided I was going to the meeting this morning, and normally their workshops are, you show up just like our workshops, and their staff and the board deals with it. They don't have any public input. Well, this morning, before I went, Eric I contacted him, or he contacted me, and said that Jennifer Wagenius said they were going to have public input. Well, I didn't have any time to prepare anything, and we hadn't met, so we hadn't discussed anything. So, but I went, and I took along a map. I did stop and have Mary Sager run me some copies of a map from 2019, because that was one of the issues I had, was that they've got a map in here and they're saying that this, and in fact, this morning, the representative from the county put this up on the screen and said, this is what we showed everybody at the meetings. And they had 3 meetings that they listed, 2018, 2019, and 2020. They said, this is what we showed people, that we had public input on this process. Well, I brought along the map from 2019, which, surprise, surprise, does not show this road. But anyway, I go up there this morning and I figure, okay, I'll just sit in the back and see what happens. As I'm sitting outside waiting for the meeting to begin, because they were on a break, I said I saw Mary Devine walk by. And she made the comment that she's writing a story for tomorrow morning's paper. Then I thought, just strange seeing Mary show up at a workshop. She generally doesn't show up for that type of thing. Well, apparently she had been contacted by the county and told that there was something for her to see today. And I walked in, and the first thing I noticed is the fact that the representatives, city administrator and the city engineer from the city of Stillwater are there. So I thought, okay. There was another gentleman that was there that I didn't recognize initially. They did introductions later, and he was the superintendent of schools from the school district. As it became apparent that what the plan was, is the county staff made their presentation, which I found a lot of to be not accurate, put it nicely. And then each one of the council member or the board members made a comment, and what they're planning to do is at their next meeting is they're planning to invoke in here they make a comment about state statute where they would take over the road. That's what their plan is. And all about the fact that all the members they were supportive of this, because if Oak Park Heights wasn't going to cooperate, this was the only choice they have. The problem is that Oak Park Heights is demanding things that they're not willing to do, and we're bringing it up at this late date, that we have to do something now, because if they don't do it now, they can't meet their construction date of 2025. The only one that was interesting is Commissioner Clausen, I believe that's how her name is pronounced. She's a new commissioner. She apparently used to be in city government. And she said, coming into today, she was inclined to side with Oak Park Heights, but that after meeting with the staff from Stillwater and the information that they provided her, she had pretty much come around to the county's decision that they have to do this. So, and then they open it up for public comment. And the first person that's up there is City of Stillwater. Gets up and says, oh, this is a wonderful process. We really need you to move forward on this, so we urge you to take this action. Second person to get up was the superintendent of schools. And he got up and said, he took a very narrow item. He basically said, whatever's in the best interests of our students, we'll support. Because they had made, all the commissioners kept saying, this is about safe routes to school. We're providing safe routes to school. There was even a comment that, well, we have to do this because we don't want somebody to get killed trying to get onto Highway 36. We don't want to have a dead body that before we do it. So it was they were being very dramatic. At this point, they said, is there anyone else who want to comment? And I stood up and I said, The analogy I use with a couple of you today when I've talked about it is, I said, because obviously what the plan was is they were going to have this, up to this point, this was all going by according to plan. And Mary Devine was going to write the story for tomorrow's paper. And I said, I got up and I said, using the metaphor that from Harry Truman, I said, the skunk showed up at the picnic. Because I got up there and I said that first thing I said was, we had not met. So I said, I was speaking strictly as from my own point of view. So none of you are stuck with this if you if you disagree with me. But I said, I started out with the fact that I said there was no open process. I said, I pointed out the map that they had showed. And I said, and I had the copy from 2019, and I handed it out to all the members. And I said, if you notice, in 2019, there was no mention of this road. I said the only mentions were, there were a couple of arrows here and a couple of arrows up in Stillwater saying possible. I said, I spoke with a representative from the county at the meeting, and the first thing he said to me was, we're not covering that tonight. I said, I was at the meeting in January of 2019. He said, we're not covering that tonight. I then elaborated with him why I was wondering. And he said that, well, they hadn't looked at any corridors. They hadn't looked at any intersections. In fact, we discussed the fact that there were 2 possible intersections that they were looking at. So that got me started on a downward track with them, because then I went over other things like they cite 1997 study. 1997 study, what the county's desire at that time, and it's included in here, was they wanted to construct a connection that would be south of the high school. Because the idea was that they were going to make it safer by taking traffic away from the high school. So if that's a safety issue. And I said, my question was, what happened between the 2019 meeting and the 2020 meeting? Because I said, we have no record of anything with the county, with the city involved. They didn't contact us, we weren't involved. And I says, by the time that they published the 2020 meeting, Stillwater, they'd already mapped it out. Stillwater was having their meeting concerning their planned unit development and the PUD and their preliminary plat, that the road had been designed in the city, in their city of Stillwater. The community development director said that it was pretty much, there were a few loose ends to tie up, but basically this is where the road's going.
Well, it sounds to me like it was kind of an interesting meeting. I'm kind of losing track here. So my suggestion is to get back onto this and talk about having a work session with them jointly and talk about these points that you've brought forward and some of the things that we've talked about before. And I think talking face to face with all of us, hear both sides of the story, and not to be a negotiation, but just to
Like I said,
to listen to everyone.
they intend to move in the next 2 weeks.
Well, then we set a work session in the next 2 weeks to get this discussed.
Commissioner Kriesel did yesterday mention that he thinks that there'll be action before the 18th, and he doesn't think a joint work session among the county and city before that vote would be possible. We could for sure propose a date between now and then.
I think it would be advantageous to do that.
Okay.
And if they respond that it doesn't work, then we'll have another discussion after that.
That makes
But I
sense.
think it, to make it,
You might want to be warned that there is going to be a story tomorrow in
Well,
mean,
obviously, if Mary Devine was there, there will be a
Because
story. And
I
I don't
got-
know if there was someone from the Star Tribune, but usually they're kind of both hand in hand. And then there's a
No.
new person there at the Star Tribune.
But Mary, I talked to Mary afterwards. In fact, I sent her some more information, and she said, and she commented, I told her, I said, I thought it was a setup, that they were setting us up to, we were going to be the bad guys. And she said, well, we'll see what she says in the paper. And then I sent her some more information this afternoon, and she said she had a 5:30 deadline for tomorrow morning, so we'll see at that point.
Well, do you have a suggestion of dates or ideas, Carly?
I know everyone's probably busier than I am, but I'm thinking if Thursday evening or Friday, I know Friday evenings are the worst because it's literally a Friday evening, but Friday evening or a weekend date might be the best for people's work schedules. I don't know what the commissioners do outside of being commissioners, but as many dates as possible might be the most beneficial. So Monday night as
We're already on
well.
the 11th.
Well, I'm actually out of town from the 16th through the 23rd. So if you can get something when I can't be there, that's fine.
I'll pull up my calendar.
Well, if you have to do it, maybe Friday afternoon. I mean, obviously Fridays are bad, but this Friday, well, no, we don't have enough time for posting, do we?
No.
So it'd have to be Monday, Tuesday next week, and then if they're going to take action on the 18th, you'd have to have a work session on the 17th.
I won't be here if it's Monday, Tuesday. I'm out of town Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week for work.
I know Saturday is not the answer everyone wants to hear, but Saturday?
If you could get them to come on, say, Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, would that work for everybody?
If it could be 9:30, it would be better, but yeah, Saturday would work.
But make it earlier than later.
Which-
9:30 on Saturday?
Which Saturday?
This
This
Saturday.
Saturday.
Then we have the 3 days for posting. You have 1 day tomorrow to get a hold of them, and then that still allows the 3 days for posting.
I would ask the mayor and council if you consider, I would strongly recommend you folks meet first
Correct.
and get your talking points in order, staff. I mean, the layout offered by Councilmember Johnson seeks to have the city staff make a 10-minute presentation, which is fine, happy to do it. We can work something out, that's not a problem. However, we need to know what direction you want to go with that presentation. Otherwise, we'll make our best guess, and you might not like what our best guess is, and we'd really not prefer that. So
Could we have that discussion now?
that's whatever you prefer. It's just that we need direction is the first thing. And if I could offer just a comment on.
Why don't we just have the discussion now rather than
Yeah.
having a separate work session? The object of having a separate work session was to meet with the county prior to their 18th
Right.
meeting. But if it's just to have that discussion, let's have it now.
So we'll have our discussion now, and then we'll do the proposed work session with the county on Saturday. So I think last we checked, we touched base in January about everyone's kind of stances on the MOU. Should we just kind of round table, go around with thoughts? Like, Chuck, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I don't think my position's really changed on this thing, and the MOU pretty much spelled it out. I mean, the one thing I always wanted is that, for them to, 58th Street, if they'd make this connection, is going to become a county road. Everybody leaving, anybody that's going north of town, if they're at Walmart, Lowe's, Menards, are going to go over to 58th Street and cut over that way, I think. And so that was always kind of my feeling on this, is 58th Street should become a county road along with us. And also there should be no cost to the city, which sounds like they're somewhat amenable to that part. So.
I think I kind of I detailed, I think, what our joint concerns were, but also my concerns in this letter, which is just the increased traffic load. And then also, we all know with the King plant closure, we are going to have an investment in infrastructure on that side of the city that's going to cost us a lot. And so having us be required to make an investment over at Memorial Avenue because of an increased traffic load, or on 58th Street because of an increased traffic load, to me, it just feels like we're going to be hemorrhaging money in a way that I'm not comfortable with at the moment. And maybe there's a solution to that, maybe, but that's something we have to work through still.
Mike?
Oh, I think you were going. Well, I think I'm still in the same spot. The part that bugs me, hearing some of this and hearing what Carly commented about Commissioner Kriesel, I don't know. I just find this highly disappointing that here we are, and we're going to bend over backwards to have a meeting with these guys. For what? If is what Commissioner Kriesel is true, what he told Carly, he don't care if they meet with us or not. They're making a decision on the 18th, and according to what Mike said tonight, that's already been set. So really, we're going to sit down and take I mean, this should have been done a long time ago. And here we are now. Our council going to bend over backwards to try to meet the date to meet with these guys? I think it's ridiculous. This should have been done a long time ago. What are we going to tell them? We've laid everything out, our MOU. What are we going to talk about? I mean, that's just frustrating. It's.
So your comment is that what we've already said is clear?
I think so. How much more clear are we going to make it?
I look at it. I look at it and say, I don't think it's worth it. Because I said, what happened was the county made an agreement, or I've got documentation from the developer. The developer says that he had a law in 2020 that when Stillwater made their agreements as far as their final PUDs and the final planning, that he had a long-term understanding and commitment from the county that they would build this road. And what happened was, when we started to get pushback, they've started to try and re-engineer backwards to justify it. There was no public input. They didn't care about us. I mean, they're saying, oh, now they'll do these traffic studies. Well, like Mike said, they should have been done when we asked them in 2020. We got a letter. We asked them to do this April of 2020. They didn't do it. I have a letter that I sent to Commissioner Kriesel saying I did not want to be in this situation. In May of 2020, I sent a letter to Commissioner Kriesel where I said that I did not want to be in a situation where, quoted was that before anyone gets moving too fast, it might be better if these concerns are addressed. I do not want to have a situation where the county comes to Oak Park Heights and tries to tell us, you must approve this road because of all the money and planning that was done, assuming that you would approve. That's May of 2020, 3 years ago. And I said, what are we talking about tonight? We're talking about the fact that, well, we have to meet with these people because they have to have a decision because we have to do this by the 18th because they need to have that in place now because if they're going to reconstruct this road in 2025, I said, their goal is to shove it down our throats and they'll make nice with this. And I just had, and I said, when the community development director in Stillwater described it as saying that this was not in their 5-year plan, but that elected officials behind the scenes were working to move it forward. This whole thing has been done behind the scenes and we're on the raw end of it.
Okay, thank you, Mike. My opinion hasn't changed, from what we've discussed before. With this, obviously, it's to be a continuation of Manning. Be designated as 15. But I do think because it is going to be quote unquote a county road, I think the county road should continue all the way to Oak Ridge for the simple reason that maybe once a traffic study, if it does come out, is going to show the increased traffic going all the way over to Oak Green anyway, because people are going to find another way going back and forth. It's going to be coming in the back roads, going to Menards or Walmart or Aldi's, pick something. So I do think that the county should pick that up all the way to Oak Green, but I am disappointed that we haven't had joint meetings prior to this. And then I'm really disappointed that our council didn't know that this work session was going on. I think it would have been polite just to have invited our city. Obviously, Stillwater was invited, so I am disappointed in that.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree, and that's where I was coming from. It's like, to me, doesn't that tell us the decision's already been made? You set a work session and you invite City of Stillwater, you invite the school district, and where the road is in the city of Oak Park Heights, and you don't invite us? To me, the decision's already been made. So what is our point with meeting with them?
Mayor, Council, if I could I ask one comment? I thought about this, I found two cool signs, right? The differences between county state aid highways and the county highway, and their approach, if I'm gathering it correctly, is, well, if we're afraid potentially the city would never grant county state aid, municipal consent under the state aid highway process, which they're required to get. So their approach then is to use just the standard county highway process, and then they can just do their thing, which is great. However, they're suggesting that they're going to take the city's road, this right-of-way, into their domain, which is roughly 300 feet, from, well, we all know where it is, pick a number. Andy will be delighted to get that off the plowing responsibility, I suspect, however. But what is that going to net them? I think what they're trying to concern themselves with is, well, avoid the potential of the city not granting municipal consent at some point in the future. And then, so they control it in one sense, and then they're going to go down this path of just a county highway. Again, they're entitled to do these things, and that's fine. But that does not mean you folks are powerless at some point in the future. Remember, it's $12.5 million in today's dollars, assuming their numbers are right. We think it's going to be a lot higher. In fact, their ask to the state when they did their sales tax increase was closer to 18.6 million. So pick a number. So they're not going to want to spend, at least, and they certainly may, their own raised revenue to their most flexible dollars, their most cherished dollars for this amount. We could be wrong, but I don't think so. So they're going to need they're going to need bonding dollars. They're going to need some grant, some kind of gift to do this project. You folks, you did it in 2020 where you sent a letter to the Met Council where you said, we don't support this. Now, their scoring was piss poor in the first place. So I shouldn't say this. The scoring was poor in the first place. But nevertheless, when the city says this city does not support this, it's not necessarily a good sign. So you have levers to pull in the future. So if they want to take this road as some kind of act by some deadline of next week, big deal. Let them take it. That's one, there's 15 more arguments that have to happen down the path. So I would offer to you, that isn't, from my little perspective, I would offer to you, it's not a glaring need for you to folks to sit down and meet with them next week or tomorrow. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it. And it's not going to really get them anything, to be fair and honest, in my opinion.
Well, no, because to me, if that's a bullish move, they are not going to want to go to the bonding committee with a project that's in Oak Park Heights and not have consent with Oak Park Heights.
Even a blessing.
The bonding committee is going to look at it as they do with all their projects. Is it shovel ready?
Yeah.
Do you have all the things you need? All consent for major parties, the majority of them? That's how they run their checklist.
Right. So you always will have that ability, and yeah, it kind of feels awkward now, and hey, I don't like it either, so to speak, but they're going to do what they're going to do. But there's 17 more things, and they'll tell you, well, we'll work with you and we'll talk to you about more dynamics of the project and layout, and they probably will, but maybe from a staff perspective, as we think about our 10 minutes, whatever that means, what would we say? I think our goal might be, look, folks, here's been the message and the narrative thus far about safety, about need. And here's Stantec studies. Here's what they tell us. Are you aware of all these things? Because I think we're stymied to get that data up the chain. So maybe that's valuable, but I don't think you need to do it next week. I mean, let's get a position where you can all find balance instead of trying to, if they're not willing to delay that simple vote out of some risk of some 2025 timeline, they've already moved that date twice.
Now, here's my suggestion, this letter that Carly drafted. Send it anyway, so that we get a response that says that they have it in writing, that they don't want to meet before their final approval. And then maybe you don't have to meet with them Friday. And then just go that way, and then we have it in writing.
Yeah, Mayor, and I would go perhaps one step further. Being the lawyer, I like things in writing. And I tend to agree with Councilmember Liljegren and Councilmember Runk that a meeting with them at this point, they're going to reject it. And even if they did entertain it, it's going to be pointless. They've made up their mind. They've clearly concocted this process in a way where we've been excluded from it. And they have stated their pretty clear intention to take this action next week. From a written proof perspective, to solidify the city's position, what I would recommend might be a letter to them, just reiterating again all our objections or concerns or issues. It's already been said before, I think, in a number of different contexts, but one more shot across the bow right before they're about to make this decision to kind of really strike forward with the process, just to say, this is our, in case it wasn't clear before, here's one more chance for you to consider our positions. And then there's a written record showing we sent this letter 2 days before their meeting where they're going to consider this, and they've ignored it yet again.
So tomorrow, when you have a staff meeting, can you draft that letter? You and Eric draft that letter. And if everyone's comfortable with them putting the wording together, and then have it signed by the mayor and sent off to them? Or do you want to have everybody sign it? I think you could have everybody sign it and maybe.
Use e-signatures, so we don't have to.
Yeah, we'd love to have you all sign it, mayor or all, at least I would think. But one
If we give you the
caveat,
authority to sign it and everybody approves that, is that okay?
one add, and maybe Kevin to think about is, having the meeting at some point may not be a bad idea. I think the crux here is this fantasy deadline they've come up with is maybe there can be a parameter in that letter, say, the city's willing to meet when the date is amenable in the next 30 days or 90 days or something. I think that can be of value, but to
I think it should be in there for the simple reason that if they're
serious.
If they're actually serious and they don't want to have a meeting, then put it in writing. If they are open to having a meeting,
We'll figure out a
then put it
day.
in writing.
Yeah.
Then we have an answer.
Yeah, we'll
As
figure out a
opposed to
day. Yeah.
Hearsay. I prefer to have
Does
it
that make
written.
sense, Kevin? Is that?
Yep.
So
I mean-
with that proposed meeting too, do we want to include similar, like kind of reworking the letter format-wise?
We'll figure it out
Yeah,
somehow.
I
And
think let staff take care of it. Kevin and Eric can take care of that.
How about maybe another spin to that? How about we put in there that we'd be open, reach out to us?
Yeah.
Then we'll know whether or not they're truthful that they want to meet with us, instead of us having to extend the arm when they've completely cut it off every time or haven't even involved us. So
Have them
put it back on them. We'd be willing to meet.
give us some dates and
Give us some
times.
dates that you guys would like to meet with us, and we'll discuss it.
I
Sounds
like
great.
that.
try to make every game.
Take all those notes, Kevin?
Got it all.
Jenny's got them.
We'll make Jenny write the letter and then we'll proof it. Right.
Oh, she's really good.
Right.
She's great at spelling. Is everybody comfortable with that? And then just, when you get ready to send it out, just shoot us a copy, and is everybody okay with them doing our signatures? Okay.
Yeah, they can probably sign my name better than I can, so, yeah.
Do you want to make a motion to have staff take care of this tomorrow?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Johnson, second by Councilmember Doherty. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Then we canceled this work session that we were supposed to have today. There was a conflict. So do you want to just try and have our goal setting prior to our next council meeting? Or not the next council meeting, I can't do the first one in May,
That should work for me.
which is,
9th?
yeah, May 9th.
Yep.
Does that work for you, Mike and Mike?
Yeah, that should.
Okay. Do you need a motion on that? Direction good enough?
That's fine, whatever
Okay.
works for you.
And then, next, are there any other council items or announcements? None? Okay. Then we're going to adjourn into a closed session. Kevin, would you like to mention that?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. As noted, when the agenda was modified at the start of the meeting, we're going to go into a closed session at this point to discuss status of labor negotiations with the unions that are involved with the city. The meeting is entitled to be closed pursuant to Minnesota statutes 13D.03 to allow the council to get and provide frank input to city staff on those negotiations. Meeting will be recorded, and we'll give a brief summary at the start of the next council meeting. We'll adjourn at the end of the closed work session. And of course, if there's any formal decisions on a contract, that will be made in an open session.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Is there a motion to adjourn to the work session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Liljegren, second by Councilmember Doherty. All in favor?
Aye.